Welcome to my tutorial for Swordship for the Nintendo Switch. This is also on PC as well. One big issue with the Switch version is that I had some major crashes late into the game. A few times, only on the final boss, when I would lose a life, occasionally the game would completely crash. And since it's a roguelike game, you have to start the entire game over whenever that happens. So it's really fucking shitty. And it is something to be aware of. I did actually really like the game aside from those crashes. My completion time was almost 5 hours before beating the game, maybe 4 hours and 48 minutes, but I probably would have beaten it a few hours sooner if not for the crashes. I did lose probably, I got to the boss one time, I had 33 lives left over or something, and then it crashed. So, I would have had 33 attempts to at least practice the boss. Even if I died, I could have got some good practice in. So I did lose a lot of time on that. But this is an interesting game. You can pretty much unlock multiple different types of ships, which is very cool. It is a game that only gives you one life. It's a roguelike type of game, so if you do lose that life, you have to restart the entire game. But it's not as bad as it seems because you can earn extra lives, and that's what's probably going to keep your runs going, aside from just getting better at the game. But basically, by delivering these packages, you can then cash them in for lives at the end of the stage. There is 3 stages in each world, you could say. So this is the first world, and it has 3 stages in it. Then you're going to go to another world. You'll be able to tell by the backgrounds changing. And then there'll be a third world with another 3 stages in it. And then there's a final boss. Now this game starts on a default difficulty of what it calls beginner difficulty, but it is quite challenging, as you can tell by my completion time. It's definitely not an easy game, though within my first hour playing the game, I did make it to the final boss, so it wasn't too bad for me initially. But the final boss is quite challenging since you don't get a lot of time to practice it. What does help, though, is if you play for a little while, you won't have to play for too long, maybe within an hour, and you will unlock a ship that, instead of the crates containing upgrades in them at the end of the stage where you can give your ship various upgrades that last for your run, instead of that, you can actually cash them in for 2 lives each. You won't be able to get any upgrades, but each crate will be worth 2 lives that you deliver. So, because of that, I was able to rack up something like 40-something lives on one of my runs for the final boss. And that gave me a lot of fucking attempts to finally beat it. Now, initially, I was playing this game on various modded joysticks. I have 4 modded joysticks, and I was testing out 3 of them on this game and alternating, because they're all a little bit different as far as the spring tension, the height of the shaft, and all this various other shit. But I was fucking around with them, and I did quite well with the joysticks, but then I switched over to the Ghillie Kit King Kong Pro 2 controller, which has no dead zone. Most responsive analog sticks I've used on that controller. And I switched over to that, and it was a big difference as far as how precisely I was able to move my ship. So if you have a controller with really good analog sticks, responsive analogs, I would recommend using analog sticks for the ship movement. You can use a joystick, but the game's really an analog game, meaning, if you're using a joystick, you're getting digital control. You're only getting 16 directions, but with analog, it's pretty much, unlimited directions. So it gives you a lot more precision. So as far as going into the basics of the game, you can see I'm delivering containers here. The way that works is, whenever you see a yellow line appear, you have to align your vehicle with the yellow line. And you don't want to dive. So you can press A to dive, which you use to dodge, and you can hold it to dive for a little while and stay underwater for a little while, which makes you immune to all damage. But when you're on that yellow line, unless you have the upgrade that allows you to dive and still get the packages, you don't want to dive when you hit the very end of the line. If you're underwater when you hit the end of the line, it won't count and you won't grab the package. So just keep that in mind. So after you do travel on the yellow line and snatch up the package, you're going to be looking for, see this yellow line right here? You'll see I just grabbed the package because I didn't dive at the end of the yellow line. And now you see these yellow little rectangles that appear. Well, that's the most dangerous part of the game, is trying to get in those rectangles and deliver your packages. As you can see, I got killed there. You want to get in those yellow rectangles and sit there for a while, and you can deliver your package and make sure that you get the package delivered for sure. Now, you can also get enemies to shoot each other by getting in front of them and making them shoot each other like that. You got to time it just right. When the line turns solid red, or when any of the indicators turn solid red, it means they're just about to fire. So you got to get used to that timing. And you can also get mines to detonate and many, many various types of enemies to either attack or explode. See, like that. You can get the mines to explode by sitting in there for a while. But yeah, now the only purpose I figured out for delivering the packages in those rectangles is so that in case you die, your package is still delivered. So what I recommend doing, if you're good at the game, you may want to avoid those rectangles. Don't try to sit in that rectangle if the area is too dangerous, because you'll end up dying and losing the package that way anyway. So if you want to risk it, you can just try beating the stage without dying, and then you'll still have all your packages if you're able to pull that off. So I believe those are the two ways that you can deliver your packages. Either you sit in that rectangle for a while until it does an animation that shows it's delivered, like this. See, that's delivered. But you can do that. Usually you get 2 chances for each package before they go away permanently, and you can't drop them off in the drop-off area. But like I said, you don't need to drop them off there. You can just not die. But if you die while carrying the packages and you didn't drop them off in the rectangle, then I believe you won't get credit for them. So just keep all that in mind. You do have a screen-clearing bomb that I almost never used. Rarely ever. Because a lot of times the screen-clearing bomb will take out the delivery zones as well, so you can't drop off your packages. It causes a lot of problems, because when you would want to use it usually is when you're trying to deliver a package. You want to clear out some shit. And when you do that, you'll blow up everything, including the delivery zone. So I found it kind of useless. The way I believe you power up your bomb to be able to use it is you got to collect these little energy cells, these yellow cells on the screen. Usually appear when you kill enemies. For the final boss, you need to collect them because you actually have to use the screen clearing bomb twice on this difficulty to kill the final boss, which I'll explain later. The way I edited this was I show all my deaths in the regular stages. So this is from my successful run, and it'll show all the times I died on my successful run. Except for the final boss. The final boss, I edited out all the deaths just to show the fight. But I do have my full run up unedited too, so you can see the extra footage you see will be all the deaths that I had on the boss on that run, but it's not really super interesting. I did post up most or not, maybe all my failed attempts. I showed the crashes where the game crashes at the end as well, which is the worst thing about the game. Now, if you play it on Steam, I'd recommend maybe checking it out on PC just because maybe it won't crash at the end of the game. I don't know if that's exclusive to the Switch, that feature, but it's really shitty. See, now you can line up so that these spinning things will hit certain targets. So if you want to injure the enemies, you can kind of just line up for a while and then, just move out at the last moment when it turns solid red, and it will aim the projectile at whatever you want to hit. Sometimes it is good to get the enemies to kill each other so that you have more room to move around, kill more enemies. So you'll notice, if you've been paying attention, you'll see that I'm using this ship that doesn't allow any kind of upgrades. But the good trade-off for that is that each package that I deliver will give me 2 extra lives at the end of the stage. So you'll notice you can trade in your packages for points, or you can get the extra lives. And I went for the extra lives. So by doing that, I'm able to amass sometimes up to 40 lives or so at the end of the game by the final boss. The stage that probably gave me the most trouble is the 3rd stage of this second world. I believe it's the next stage. But it's already starting to get pretty aggressive. Now, as far as unlocking the other difficulties, my understanding is that to unlock the next difficulty, which is normal mode, and once you unlock the next difficulty, it becomes the default difficulty of the game. It's not something you select in the beginning of the game or anything. You only see the difficulty right before the final boss. You'll see something that says beginner, normal, I think there's an expert mode or something like that, and you'll see that right before the final boss. But in order to upgrade the difficulty setting, basically, you have to unlock it through XP points that you get through, when you fail a run, or if you succeed, you'll get XP that will unlock new things like new ships and other different things, different upgrades. So eventually, if you get enough points, it seems to unlock the next difficulty. Now, I don't know if I unlock normal because while my game did not crash on the final boss, after the final boss fight, because usually it's you lose a life and then the game crashes. Not during the final boss fight, but right after you die, usually. It will crash and you'll have to start the whole game over. So I got pretty good at getting back to the final boss faster. So I was doing pretty well at this point on the stages. But it did crash in the XP screen at the very end of the game, the screen clear, where it rounds up all your XP and gives you bonuses. So I don't know if I got any of the bonuses, such as unlocking normal probably would have been the next big bonus. So I don't know if I unlocked normal. The only way for me to find out is to play the game and see if there's any changes, and then I'll see if it's unlocked. If it did unlock, then maybe I will try the harder settings. If I do, I'll make separate tutorials for those because it's going to be a little bit different. Now, as far as ending each stage, I can't tell you what triggers the ending of a stage. I'm still not sure. I don't think you have to deliver a certain amount of packages to end the stage because there's times when I've only delivered like one package and I still end the stage. So I don't know if it's based on a certain amount of time. I believe enemy spawns are randomized on each playthrough. I believe it's kind of a randomized game, but I could be wrong about that. But I did notice when I died and respawned, whenever you die, you do respawn somewhere, and I believe you respawn at some kind of checkpoint. But it always seems to be different enemy arrangements when I respawn. Like, I don't recognize the enemy arrangements that, of where it doesn't look like the area where I died. So I don't know where the fuck it puts you. But I know that when I died a lot on a stage, it took me a lot longer to beat the stages, and they dragged on for a lot longer. So I don't know how far back it's sending you. And I also don't know when it determines that the stage is complete. Eventually it just says line cleared and the stage ends, but I don't know if it requires you to ride that yellow line. I don't know if you have to ride the final yellow line in the stage to get the stage clear, because it seems like I've missed that before and the stage still ended. But it is advised that you do try to ride those yellow lines and collect those packages because you want those extra lives. So I do recommend trying to do that whenever you can. But again, you got to decide in the moment if you want to lose a life and risk it, because it's dangerous sometimes to be in those areas. Now, when you're on the yellow line, remember, you don't have to move up or down on the yellow line to try to get to the end of the line faster, because sometimes there's enemies and shit on there. All you got to do is get on one part of the yellow line, a safe spot in the yellow line, and just stay there until your ship auto-scrolls past the yellow line. You don't have to actually move up or down on the line itself. So find a safe spot on those yellow lines, and you should be able to snatch the package. But sometimes it is really fucking dense, and sometimes there's not really a safe way to do it. So that last stage you saw me just beat, that was the hardest stage in the game for me, the World 2-3 stage. And I don't have any great advice except from you just have to get used to it. Remember, each enemy has its own distinct patterns, and try to use other enemies to block off their shots. And of course, get them to hit each other. And if you can detonate the mines, obviously, detonate them on the enemies if you can. That does help. Now, one thing to notice, my recommendation for this final world, this is the World 3, the final world. My recommendation for this world is to stay mostly in the middle of the screen, because what happens in this stage is something a little new. You have these walls, and you'll get a little warning with this red wall of just red color, as you can see. It's a little bit of a warning that a wall is coming up. And if you're not paying close attention, you'll run right into the wall. So unless you're really focused on that, I recommend just stay mostly in that main middle zone. Try to stay mostly in the middle on this final world. It is a lot safer than riding on the very edges of the screen. You do die in one hit, which I may have mentioned. There's a lot of little basics to cover, so it's taken me most of the video just to cover that. But, where it's going to be mostly helpful is the final boss. I can try to explain that pretty well. Now, when you replay the game on normal difficulty, if you unlock it, if it doesn't fucking crash on you, apparently I've seen videos of the fights and shit just to see what was different. And the boss will have like instead of like 2 health, the boss, I think it goes up to 3 health, which means there's going to be 3 phases to the boss that you're going to have to learn patterns for, basically. And then on the expert difficulty or whatever it's called, that has like I think 4 phases. So that's the main differences that I noticed with the final boss fight. The stages, they didn't look that much harder, but there's some weather effects added, but it really didn't look that much faster or more difficult to me on expert, but I'll have to play it to really update on that. Now with this stage, I find this third stage to be one of the easiest stages, probably even easier than the first world. It could just be me, but the first world would give me some trouble with all those turret lasers. You know, sometimes it's hard to stay away from all of them. So sometimes I'd get caught up. But this one I don't find to be too bad. You can usually take cover behind or on the side of one of these huge laser turret things. These massive laser blasters. A lot of times you can go on the opposite side of them and take cover. Remember, you can use your dive to go under shit and get on the other side of things too. So keep that in mind. It's a way to bypass a lot of shit and get on a safe side fast. And if you need to, you can use your bombs, but I don't really recommend it on the stages too much because it usually gets rid of good shit. But you can experiment with that. I didn't really use them too much on the regular stages. Sometimes when it got really wild, I would. But normally I just try to deal with it. But yeah, what I like about this enemy right here, it's more helpful than harmful because it shoots these orange fireballs at you. And you can really just kind of just line it up with enemies and kill a lot of the enemies too. So it's pretty useful. Of course, these laser turrets are the same as they were in the first stage. You know, you can make them shoot each other, and they're pretty much the same type of enemy. Now, see, I missed that yellow line, but it's good to try to get them when you can, but don't get yourself killed just to get it. It's not, you know, it's not really worth losing a life over. But it can get pretty aggressive, but I found this stage to be overall a lot more manageable. You see, I already have 33 lives stocked up by using this ship, which converts, you know, upgrades into extra lives. Now, normally when you deliver a package, you always get an extra life. But see, with this ship, you get 2 lives instead of 1, which is a nice fucking bonus. And then, of course, on top of that, you know, of course, you're not able to get any upgrades for your ship, but to be honest, the upgrades didn't really help me that much anyway. Like, some of them will allow you to dive and still collect the package. Some of them will, you know, allow, like, instant package delivery, apparently. But I think that was one of the ships that had that built into it. But I didn't notice anything with that. Like, my packages still didn't seem to get delivered instantly. So it seemed like that was a really shitty description. That's another thing I could complain about. I like complaining about shit. But my main complaint was firstly the fucking glitches. I hate the fucking glitches because you lose all your progress. You gotta, well, you know, you don't get your XP progress either when it crashes. So you don't unlock new stuff, and you got to start the game over. But you know, whatever XP you got in your runs that didn't glitch out, of course you'll keep that. It won't erase all your data, but it's just you don't get credit for your run, so it sucks. And then you know, if you're working on a final boss, it could piss you off because you're trying to practice. You may not even know how to fight the guy yet. And then you got to start the whole game over after dying like 2 or 3 times. It may crash. Sometimes I would die like 16 times and then it would crash, but I still had maybe 13 lives left that I could have used to try to beat the boss or at least learn it. So that pissed me off. It crashed on the last boss for me at least twice, and then it crashed maybe a 3rd or 4th time on the stats screen at the very end of the game after I beat the game, after the credits rolled. I'm starting to die a little bit here, so this was giving me more trouble this time around than it usually does. So each stage, some stages have more containers to collect than others, which is good, because more containers means you can, you know, if you can get all 4 containers, you can get 8 extra lives on one run, which is nice. It shows your lives in the upper left corner. I don't know if it shows when you have a bomb ready to drop. I didn't see that indicated anywhere. I just mashed the button and hope it works. But maybe there's a way to see it. I don't know. I just fucking hope it works usually. I only use it when I'm really about to die and it gets super fucking dense and I don't think I'm going to survive. But I rarely used it. But I also don't know what that left indicator is where those bars are. I thought it was maybe packages that you delivered on that left, middle part of the screen, but that doesn't seem to line up with that either. So I don't even know what that is. I'm not even sure what that is. Maybe if you fill all those up, you have a bomb or something. I don't know. I could try to guess, but I never figured it out. So it's not too important, but it would be nice to have an indicator to know how many packages you delivered during a stage, just to know. It would be nice to know when your fucking bombs are ready. Just basic HUD shit that should be there. Now, my second big gripe with the game, those are just minor complaints. The glitch is my major complaint. My second issue is it's got one of those shitty slow motion cameras whenever the game determines you did some kind of fucking stunt. Whenever that happens, the game is going to do a slow motion camera where it slows everything down and zooms in the camera. And then when you come out of that, you can very easily get killed or blindsided. It totally fucks up your point of view. It fucks up your momentum and your rhythm that you had going. And I really wish that you could turn that off. Like games like Burnout, whenever I could turn off the crash camera, I did it. And it's similar to that. And it's not a bad feature if you find it exciting or whatever, but when you're trying to do good in the game, these are the kind of things that can kind of shit on the pacing of the game and cause some confusion when you're trying to focus on doing certain things. So I would like if you could turn that camera off. I think that would be cool. They should allow you to turn that shit off. So maybe I'll give this game a little review score at the end of this tutorial, and I'll just call it a tutorial and review. I can get both done in one video. I don't know if I've done that yet, but that might not be a bad idea. But yeah, same type of thing here. You want to try to block these things off. Remember that huge laser is also a shield to you, which is really helpful and makes the stage pretty damn easy because a lot of times you can hide behind that laser. And enemy fire cannot get through there, but there are these enemies that make circles on the ground. They usually do 3 circles, and when each circle goes solid, it's going to explode into a bomb. So by now you're going to be familiar with those, but it does keep you moving. You can't just sit there forever. So they did, when they designed the game, they were fairly smart about it. They had different types of enemies that will force you to go out of cover and things like that. So it is quite well designed. This is where I start throwing in my little review commentary. But yeah, it's quite a well-designed game, and I really like the uniqueness of it, of a pacifist-style game where you don't actually shoot anything. You just dodge. And you cause enemies to shoot each other. I think it's an awesome concept, and it's pretty damn well executed. I have to decide if I want to drop the score because of the fucking glitches, but, maybe I'll give it 2 scores. Because that is a serious problem, but if you're playing on Steam, maybe you won't have that problem on PC. Now, see where it says difficulty beginner? This is for the final boss. That's how the game is on default. It starts you at beginner for the difficulty. But it's quite hard, like I said. Now, for this boss, you're going to have to learn all these various patterns, and once you learn them, they're just going to keep repeating. So you really have to get these patterns down. And one of my best pieces of advice is don't be greedy with collecting those 3 yellow balls that you got to collect to power up your bomb. You do need to collect them to get enough of them to use your bomb on the boss to end its phase. So once you bomb it, it will end its first phase, and then you're going to have to bomb it again to finish it off. You only have to bomb it twice to defeat it on beginner. So once you collect enough of those yellow things, I think it's something like 15 of those yellow things. Once you collect them, you're going to get on the line and ride it like you usually do when you're collecting a package. But this time, instead of collecting a package, it's arming your bomb. So once that's armed, you hit A, or maybe B. I think it's B, actually. You hit B, and that will shoot off the bomb. Now, fire off your bomb immediately. Just mash B while you're on the yellow line, and it'll fire it off immediately. And that way you bomb it immediately and don't die on the yellow line. You want to activate it as soon as possible. But aside from that, these are all patterns that you have to learn. Like this sweeping pattern, you go under, you dive under, and go to the left. With this, now you got the yellow line here. And I did really well on this one this time, so it went by pretty damn fast. But what I can say is each one of those laser patterns has pretty specific patterns that you can learn. And my best recommendation is, since this game doesn't have save states, unless you're playing on emulation, which may actually be a thing now, there's no save states. So the best thing to do is play for a little while. Maybe it takes about 30 minutes or an hour, and you'll unlock this ship. And once you unlock this ship, it's going to be the ship that gives you extra lives instead of upgrades. So once you get that, get good at the stages, by playing, obviously. And then once you get to the boss, try to get there with 30 or 40 lives. And then you get tons of practice attempts. So just look at it as practice. You're probably not going to beat it on your first 40 lives. I went through quite a few lives. If you do, then you're doing very well. But it could be also that I was using joysticks when it's not a digital game, but an analog game, and I may have gimped myself a bit for most of the playthrough. So now I will use the analog sticks, and I do recommend that. But it's totally playable with a joystick. I did similar, well, with the joystick. So I actually got to the final boss with more lives when I used the joystick, but I did worse on the actual boss fight. So it's totally doable either way. Another thing I recommend is when you're grabbing those yellow things, when you see the pattern of every other laser and the yellow things are kind of in the middle, I recommend most of the time avoiding trying to grab the yellow things. One of my biggest strats is to only grab the yellow things in the patterns that you feel safe with. If there's a pattern that you're not good at dodging, don't try to grab the yellow things. Just try to concentrate on surviving. There's also other patterns where there's 4 quadrants basically with the lasers, and only one of them is going to be a deadly zone, and you got to be in the right quadrant. But just remember, you can also go underwater and cut through diagonally and grab them in that particular pattern. But there's a bunch of different patterns, and if you watch my video carefully, you'll see how I manage each of the patterns. It's pretty damn easy to determine if you carefully watch, if you're having trouble with a specific pattern. But remember, don't be greedy with grabbing those yellow things. Be patient. Grab them when you can get them safely, and eventually you'll have enough to do your bombings. And after 2 bombings, you'll beat it on beginner. Now, I will maybe do a tutorial on normal if I feel like playing it again with all these fucking crashes. Then I will do following tutorials on the harder settings. But as far as my review of the game, I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10. Enjoyment can go down to like maybe a 6.5 or lower, which is decent because of all the fucking crashes and shit. But at its core, the core game for me is a solid 7. I think it's quite a good game. I really like that it did something unique. It plays really well for the most part. I do have some annoyances. I don't like the slow motion camera at all. I would disable it, but that can't be done as far as I know. There are some other options to turn on alerts earlier and shit before the attacks and stuff. You can fuck with that, but I left it on default. I didn't really want to make the game easier. I just wanted to play it as is. But you do have some options with that. So for some players, maybe that'll be better, more manageable. Maybe it's good to practice with that, and you can turn it up as you get better. But yeah, I think the game plays great. I mean, it's a little short, but it feels like a good length for a roguelike game since you start with 1 life and you're just trying to survive. I think it's a nice length. It's addictive. It's enjoyable. It's a fun game to replay. It's just like if it didn't have those fucking glitches, it would be a lot better. But for me, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.